Hey there, and thanks for tuning in to another episode of Moore's October Rants. Today's episode is one that's close to the heart. We're diving into the topic of change. Now, here's the thing about change, it's powerful, right? When we go through it ourselves, when we really feel that transformation, it opens us up to believe that maybe others can change too. But society? Society doesn't always make it easy to think that way. There's so much judgment out there. You hear people say things like, once a cheater, always a cheater, or make snap judgments about people who've been to jail. We get so used to boxing people in based on their mistakes, and after a while we almost start to forget that they're still people. People who, just like us, are capable of growth, capable of learning, and capable of change. I mean, think about it. We all mess up. Every single one of us has a moment we're not proud of. And honestly, if we're judging people by their worst moments, what does that say about us? I know I've done things, said things, acted in ways that I wouldn't exactly be proud of if I saw someone else doing it. I look back at some parts of my past, and it almost feels like a skin I've shed, a version of me that I grew out of. And let me tell you, it's not easy admitting this stuff, even to myself, let alone saying it out loud here. But I'm sharing it because I think it's important to remember that who we were then isn't who we are now, and it doesn't have to be who we'll be tomorrow. And that's not just true for me or for you, but for everyone. I'm not just saying this to make it about my story. I'm sharing it because I know I'm not alone in this. If I look back on who I was, on certain opinions I held, or things I thought were funny, man, sometimes I cringe. Back in the day, I'd make jokes or say things that I'd never say now. In fact, sometimes I think, how could I have thought that was okay? But it's all part of growing up, evolving, getting wiser, and realizing that some of the things we once believed were okay actually aren't. You know, mistakes have this way of teaching us things we'd probably never learn otherwise. They can shape us, make us better if we let them. Sure, there are people who mess up and just keep messing up without learning. But for a lot of us, mistakes are like these hard-won lessons. We go through stuff, mess up, and come out the other side a little smarter, a little kinder. That's where growth lives. But as a society, we tend to hold people hostage to their mistakes. We pigeonhole them, sometimes forever, as if they're no more than their worst moment. That lack of compassion, man, it hurts. And it's missing big time in our world right now. We're so quick to judge people, especially people we don't even know. We hear one thing about someone, or we see them in one moment, and we make up our minds. But let's be real here. Would we want people to do the same to us? To decide who we are based on one bad day or one thing we said? We're so much more than that. We're not just the mistakes we've made, or even the successes we've achieved. We're this whole complicated, ever-changing mix of good and bad, of lessons and stumbles, of growth and setbacks. It's easy to label someone as a failure or a bad person when all we know about them is what they did wrong. But that's not the whole story. We're all made up of the fire we've walked through, the lessons we've learned, and yes, sometimes the pain we've caused and had to learn from. That's what makes us human. We're not just our lowest points. For me, when I look back at who I was, it's like I'm looking at someone else entirely. If you gave me a book full of things I said or did a few years back, I'd be shaking my head at half of it. I'd be like, did I really say that? But that's how I know people can change. Because if I can look back at myself and not even recognize the person I used to be, then who am I to say someone else can't change too? And this judgment thing, it's a killer. The more we judge, the harder it is for people to even believe they can change. Imagine someone constantly telling you, you'll never be any different. You start to believe it, right? That judgment, that labeling, it builds this wall between us and the chance to grow. It locks us into the mistakes of our past instead of helping us learn from them. Maybe instead of judging each other all the time, we could try showing a little more understanding. Instead of shaking our heads at each other's mistakes, maybe we could start shaking hands more, reach out, and actually connect. Because at the end of the day, we're all walking our own journeys. We all know what it's like to struggle. And when we show each other compassion, it gives people the chance to see that they can be better, that they can grow. And honestly, Isn't that what we all want for ourselves too? All right, that's my take on change. Thank you for sticking around and listening to this episode of Moore's October Rants. Hope it got you thinking a little bit. Signing out. Have a good one. Goodbye.